He didn't resist as they marched him away. I presumed he knew there was no point, with nowhere to run or tricks left to play. He showed no surprise when we reached the airlock.
You could wait until we have the Liberator in.
I don't think I can take the risk.
That's what I thought.
Goodbye, Kerr. It has been most entertaining. There was no response from him. He just stood braced and ready for the end. As I crossed to the controls, he looked at me and smiled. And then he was gone. Through the airlock, I saw his body twist in the vacuum, tumbling over and over, then lost in the glare of the nearby sun. What is that? What's happening? It was him. Of course it was him. The details only became clear afterwards, but as soon as the alarm sounded, I knew. Somehow he'd got the better of me. It was the plasma charge. Kerr had paired it with a transceiver keyed to his vital signs. As soon as the airlock cycled and the life was sucked from his body, the charge had detonated. He'd played his hand well. The radiation wave had already begun to sweep across the system. The Liberator was still far enough away to be certain of escape. Whereas without any advance warning, our own situation was compromised and far more perilous. Get us out of here! Maximum power! I remained still as the crew drove the ship forward, the radiation wave chasing our tail for almost an hour before finally dissipating. It was a long hour with death at our shoulder, and as we ran, I sat there, reflecting on the loss of my prize. Not just the Liberator, but also Kerr himself. I thought of Avon and wondered just how like Kerr he might be. Kerr could have told me of his failsafe, could have bargained for his life, but by then he'd been unable to trust even himself. It was better to choose an end he could be certain of. Better to die and have victory in death. In those last moments, he believed he was gaining revenge against me and the manner of his creation. The truth was, I'd not lied to him. He could not harm me, but it was one instruction and one alone. A solitary grain of sand in the desert of his genetic makeup. Kerr had been scornful of Avon, certain that his weaknesses were not shared. The irony is, if the manipulation of his DNA template had any adverse effect, it was to give him a chain to pull against, and doing so, amplify his personality. That final, fatal inability to trust was born within him. It was why Avon himself was never at ease within the Federation's embrace. It also made his relationship with Blake even harder to understand. Because for all of Blake's fanaticism, I knew then, Avon had the potential to be far more dangerous, and so very interesting. All these thoughts occurred and collided during that hour. But more than anything, what I thought of was the way he'd smiled at the end. The eyes are the window onto the soul. But those eyes never told me anything. Instead, the measure of the man came with that curl of his mouth. All that time, I'd never been quite sure what his smile meant, but now I knew better. Born of his own quiet certainties, it was an acknowledgement of life's innate cruelty, and more, his own amusement at it. His way of defying the inevitable.